All right, we'll come right back for the second session here. We're going to give him a little desensitizing with the bag or with the saddle pad here. Make sure he's comfortable with things flopping around before I go ahead and saddle him up. They told me that they usually have him in cross ties. I'm still solid. They've told me that they usually put him in cross ties to do anything with them as far as brushing them or saddling them or whatever. I'm not a fan of cross ties. I want these guys to stand still and pay attention to where I put them without having to tie them hard and fast to something. I'll teach them how to tie up and get saddled too, but initially I want them to stand in one spot. So we might have to work on that a little bit today to get him to stand still when I ask him to stand still to get saddled up. But we'll see. I also don't know whether he's ever had a flank cinch on before. I would think that based on what I have gotten out of him so far, he probably has had a flank cinch, but we're gonna work on the assumption that he hasn't had one on, and I'll just put the front cinch on first and get him used to my saddle and how it feels and see how he works with just the front cinch, and then we'll move on to the second cinch. And we'll have to, of course, adjust all this saddle gear, cinches and stuff, because this saddle goes on 3 or 4 different horses a day, and that's why I double rig my saddle with cinches on, or with latigos on both sides. So that I've got a lot of adjustment on how I work things. See him wanting to reach back here? That's probably because he's a little bit cinchy, and that's where he bites, is because somebody cinched him up too tight and maybe pinched him a little bit. And when I do this, I just cinch it up so it's snug enough to keep my saddle in place. And then you just cinch it up as you go along. And let them work into those cinches. Of course, my J.C. Martin cold starting saddle fits him pretty darn well, just like it does every other horse. He's a little bit narrower in the back, and he's downhill, so it kind of looks like my saddle is sitting up in the back a little bit, but that's only because he's downhill in his front shoulders, and withers are lower than his hindquarters. So it's going to look like it's a little off, but it's sitting pretty solid on his back. He's got a little bit of a round in his back, so we're going to put this flank cinch on and see how it goes. Last horse I had this on was a little Chincoteague pony that's not very big, but pretty big around. You can see that I like having my flank cinch right up there on their belly where they can feel it, and it's not a surprise to them when they set back into it. So we're just going to kind of stand back here a little bit, get him moving with that flank cinch and see how he goes with it. Whoa. So, he knows the basics, but it's kind of like, you know, he's going through the motions. He knows his stuff, but he's not exactly motivated to really pay attention here and focus, and that's okay. That all comes with time, and once he learns that when the halter goes on, it's time to do a job, and he's got to pay attention and focus and do what I want. And you can't expect these young horses to maintain total obedience and focus for more than 25 or 30 minutes. That all comes with time and practice on their part and on your part. So, for what I wanted to get done with him today, that's a pretty decent start to my day. Back up. There, now he's waking up a little bit, getting a little more energy. That's good. So one thing I want to do with these guys too is, it's not my job to fire these guys up and get them performing at top level performance horse business. I want to make a good, sensible, safe horse that's ready to move on to whatever the owner wants to do with them. And that means a lot of slow work, a lot of walk, a lot of trot, and a lot of concentration on the basic foundation stuff that every horse needs to know. And he's got a lot of that. It's just a matter of tweaking those feet, working the quarters, working the hinds, working the fronts, and continuing up the ladder of knowledge. We're going to do a little riding from the ground here and see if I can get him to take a step out on his fronts. See, he hasn't learned a lot about any of this. He knows bending, but backing up is not a strong suit of his. He gets really bracy when it comes to backing up. There. That's better. See, and these are all the holes that I need to see about filling. And when he starts getting it easy, I do enough firm to get what I'm asking. But the minute he does it, we go right back to being light again. When he drops his head and he takes it with just fingertip pressure and coming back like he's supposed to, there, that's perfect. Now we're going to try this again and see if I can get him to back up a little bit this way and take a step out. First I'm going to get him, I would just want to see if I can get him to back up a little bit here, rather than asking him to step out. He's been ground drove a little bit, and you can tell because he's bracing up on this, he's bracing up and holding rather than actually stepping back. There, that's better. So he's got some rudimentary groundwork put into him, but he doesn't have a lot of time of actual taking cues off of these reins. He bends a little bit, but see him brace up there? Pay attention. Somebody's worked quite a lot on getting them collected, but they should have worked on bending and flexing and moving those feet before that collection came in like that, because he's just locking himself up rather than actually freeing himself up and getting those feet going. It's been a lot of pull and jerk training, not sitting and waiting and being easy and waiting him out a little bit to see if I can get those feet to move without pulling and jerking. What has been done to this horse with the ground driving, the reins are down in here when they're ground driving, so he automatically knows when the reins come down in here, he has to bring his head down like that, collect, and drive around like that, rather than keeping his shoulders up there and keeping his head up a little bit so that he can actually back up. There. That's a lot better. And I got to teach him how to keep his head up and his shoulders up, especially because he's so downhill on the front end. I got to work really hard to keep his head up, at least level with his withers, so that he can get his weight off of them shoulders and back up. There. All right. Lots of work on his feet we got to do, but that'll come. That'll come. So we're going to turn him loose. We'll call it good there for the time being. Turn him loose and let him just pack this saddle around a little bit and relax, and perhaps come back and give him another little lesson here a little later on.